enjoy gaming in the cloud. No, not that cloud. These beautiful volumetric procedural ones that landed with the next update, along with a vast rewrite of core methods from scratch, as I covered last year in depth when that hit. Check out that for more on the procedural texturing, voxel destruction, and how much of a leap it was over the base release, if you've not already, of course. Now, the team went above with that update, but now they go beyond with the latest, adding a much larger collection of multiplayer options over the 4-player limit, allowing up to 32 players on PC to team up and fly off into missions as a team. More choices on base building, vehicles and creatures have also made the cut, and these incremental enhancements for free show the true best side of games as a service. Being free, it not only enhances the game, but the value it offers over time, while keeping a game fresh and selling it to a new or returning player base. By far the biggest update here though, and one that this game really cried out for, was a VR mode. Well, mode is unfair. This is just the full game in VR. No cutback settings or limits here, such as GT Sport, as superb as it was, and I covered in depth when that landed. Also, it even enables 2D and 3D players to enjoy the same world together. It cannot be understated how much the VR function adds to the escapism and wonder this magnificent piece of gaming history dials you into, via the seeded procedural universe that almost covers every object, texture, fauna and star you see. The visuals do take some sacrifices here on PS4, with the high-end Oculus or Vive certainly boosting close to the full fat release, but in the end, it is No Man's Sky inside your very own helmet, and you are transported to your own galaxy far, far away. Flying into or across the planet's surface, circling cloud formations, shooting asteroids, swimming in deadly seas, building your base, or just hyperdriving to the next planet's discovery. This is arguably one of the most immersive and exciting games to benefit from this re-emerging technology. The boy in me always gets flashes back to Elite, of course, when docking the space station. Doing it manually in VR is really on another level of geeking out. It cannot be described or demonstrated fully without you trying on the helmet and getting lost and fooled into this level of immersion. I know many may ask, but how can they take a game that ran under 60 FPS, even on pro hardware at 1080p at times, and deliver the kinds of super smooth 120Hz consistent refresh rate that VR demands? Well, let me take you on a flight of the Navigator to just what has been cut to deliver this star-struck delight. Resolution is unsurprisingly the first reduction to aid these demands. Pro and PS4 coming with identical counts fixed at 1280 by 720 or 640 by 720 per eye. Now, I did get some counts close to 1440 by 810, but I believe this is from temporal AA rather than a dynamic solution at play, but I would be foolish to rule it out entirely. Now, if integer scaling is in play, it does not have a wide band of variation, but the image on both consoles does suffer inside the helmet, across soft details, breakup and instability into the mid to far distance. Now, this can make objects harder to define, and any high frequency elements can be lost due to the lower relevant resolution and the proximity to your eyeballs, and that temporal AA is trying to work with the best that it has. Now, this is by far the single biggest cost of a VR world, and although many titles have delivered much better IQ, specifically on the Pro, which may get a patch later to boost this a little more, the sheer scale of what the console is having to deliver here is far beyond what those and most games are attempting. If you're watching this with a PC VR version though, please let me know in the comments how it actually looks on that. Now, leaving resolution aside, we move into the next area that has been reduced, which hits both CPU and GPU alike now. The level of LOD is cut back significantly from base versions. Side by side, you can see the same planet's view from 2D to VR can see a vast culling of trees, objects and detail off into the distance. Walking along or flying, you see objects pop in on all versions, but this is obviously evident on the original standard release as well. But the VR is one of the most affected here, with creatures sometimes popping in feet from your gaze. Shadow maps are also heavily cooled within the frustum, causing them to pop in or draw in very close to your field of view. And on the outer edges, as you turn your head, you can see these shadow maps being cooled as the head turns. SSO is kept in the game, and this does help keep the plants and fauna grounded, but the frustum aligned billboards are far more obvious here, with them panning with your head but disappearing from existence when turning your body, which makes them incredibly obvious to their construction. Now, these methods are used in all games for the past 15-20 years or so, including this one. As most things in VR, these are harder to hide for the devs and therefore easier to spot for the player. Thus, these two worlds collide here and add another change to the world detail, though it does nothing to distract from its wonder overall. Other cutbacks are less obvious, such as no tessellation on surfaces, lower LOD levels on nearer objects, reducing the triangle load, animation cycles are removed or reduced within the frustum, lower material composites on some surfaces, lower alpha sprite effects, particles and billboards, along with the reduction of them within batched groups. They're all minor, but adding all these up, these gains do make a significant saving within the frame time to help elevate beyond that 33 milliseconds, on PS4 at least, level to the required 16.7 milliseconds for the game and rendering logic. Now, although the game, like all VR titles, runs at 120Hz or FPS, it does so in a split method using time warping or reprojection via the positional tracking data from the headset Z buffer and then repolling at the very last point before the rendered frames. Now, I've covered this in more depth a few years ago in my VR video. I will have a video up soon going more in depth on VR and the demands, processes, etc. I think it will all be lost here. So the short version is 2 views have to be rendered per frame at 60 Hz alongside the 120Hz reprojection. Now, in theory, this means the PS4 or Pro would need, all things being equal, twice the horsepower to run the game at 120Hz and then split this into 2 views at 60Hz. Now, this is not magically possible, of course, so we see the cutbacks covered here to achieve those high demands that impact all aspects of the engine and hardware, but the results are a rock solid frame rate and relatively low sickness levels, so long as you've been used to VR for a while, of course. You do get some moments when you land on uneven surfaces in your ship and your brain is yelling at you, you're falling backwards, but you know you're actually sitting down flat. But this is the joy of VR and the separation of visual and synaptic feedback within these worlds at moments and your inner ear, which cause the VR legs we are all used to and such feelings we get from time to time when you go into and out of VR games. All in all, it's not bad though, as the core game is fully present and correct here. Those gorgeous and fluffy voxel constructed volumetric clouds wrap around the planet's troposphere, adding density and depth as you enter and leave orbit. They still billow, build and cast shadows across the terrain as you do. Again though, these are sacrificed in a lower quality resolution and therefore voxel grid, but it's all minor sacrifices to keep that frame rate and that visual presentation as sky high as it is still in the VR mode. Asteroids can still be destroyed into space chunks like some retro VR joint, and even the once frame rate crippling terrain deformation weapon can be wielded with voxel destruction with no sign of performance hiccups or lunch returning. Creatures still roam the land, storms are spun up, and really add a great deal more depth to the world and atmosphere in VR as the rain hits the canopy of your ship or blows past you in spatial audio as you frantically build a base haven from them as they come sweeping in. Swimming in seas, riding animals or teaming up is all greatly enhanced here with the huge leap virtual reality brings to them, and it's simply exquisite. Add in the fact that you can play the game with both a DualShock and the Move controllers and all the options on Vive and Oculus. That means you can actually use the game with both your hands and actually point around, and it feels far more intuitive and realistic when you're using the Move controllers. So I really recommend that as an option if you have the choice. I've spent hours on this already in VR, and it feels sometimes like a brand new world. You really get to appreciate all that visual elements and that immersion the game offers. Now, it has got some heavy sacrifices on the base consoles, and it's a shame that the Pro isn't being pushed more, but again, this is a very small team, so maybe they'll add those boosts and benefits once they've redefined and got some time to work out what the best options are on the Pro. For now, you are going to be immersed and amazed in both versions of the title, and that PC version is still an option if you want the best looking VR options available at the moment. I said it before and again here, the leaps and bounds Hello Games have taken with this game, the engine and the choice is really a revelation. I can see me returning to the title even in the next generation with a likely sequel or expansion to elevate it into the stratosphere. And what really excites me the most is what this is just going to offer on the next level of console hardware dedicated to supporting these VR experiences can actually deliver overall, and I'm sure it will be above and beyond what is already an incredible VR expansion for free. It would be a fool to miss it. And another video rolls to a close. I hope you enjoyed this or anything else that I've put together. I'm completely independent and self-funded, and this is a part-time gig, so if you do like what I do here on all my other videos on the channel, then please think about subscribing and sharing and all that good stuff. Anyway, I'll catch you very soon in the space outside.